Okay, I think we're going to get rolling here. It is my pleasure to welcome Garett Hwang, the director of UNStudio, as our next speaker, joining us from Shanghai today. Join me up here. And the topic is on the future of urbanism, designing for livability and resiliency. Welcome. Thank you. Enjoy.
You're okay? Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm Garett Hwang. I have no remote, so I can't even control. Here we go. Alrighty. I am the director of UNStudio. We are a Dutch office. We have our headquarters in Amsterdam. However, about 15 years ago, we already entered the Asia markets with our first international office in Shanghai, following with an office in Hong Kong, which is where I usually reside. UNStudio really does a bit of everything, from the very, very small to very, very big, master planning. But I would say that really what we do is we design. Now, what does design mean? Usually when an architect or a designer says they're design, then they show things like this. And then this means that we're designers. But actually, in my opinion, this is the resultant, right? This is what you end up with. What designers do is deal with this. And the factors is that, so every day we're problem solvers, right? We deal with the constraints, the conditions, the hopes, the dreams, site issues, what kind of experience you want to create. And of course, we deal with the ongoing, evolving conditions that are coming to our world. And so right now, these four are kind of a summary of the biggest ones, right? We have societal changes, environmental, economic changes, and of course, technological changes. Now, how we put this together, how we resolve this, leads us to puzzling together the solutions. And that solution is what the design comes. And the better designs, in my opinion, are ones where you cannot see all the different conditions and constraints that you have to deal with, right? The easier, the more elegant the design solution, that means that the more holistic that your solution was to resolve all of these different considerations. Now, at the base of every piece you have is, of course, the user. And the user is the ultimate, most important factor in what you're doing and when you design. And I think that's where we are right now in case studies. So what does it mean then when you have this holistic design? So we'll show a couple examples. One, for example, is our Marina Clubhouse project, which we did in Zhongshan, China. It was a mixed-use project, which included a hotel, retail, F&B, the clubhouse, different VIP amenities. And the solution really was to find a single concept of these voids or tunnels that were going through that really, one, framed the views towards the waterfront, led the main circulation through, connected all the different programs, and really maximized the natural ventilation so that we didn't require any additional energy to cool this large interior space. Next project is our facade design that we did for our Hanwha, a repeated client that we have in Korea, where the client really wanted to restore their product. They wanted to create an identity for their headquarters that really reflected their brand identity. And so we wanted to create a project which, one, provided enough operational carbon, right, in the project itself, and to create a pattern or a facade that really accentuated where people were gathering or where people were working separately. And so the entire project is made of PV panels that are maximized based on where the sun is traveling. And it's not only an interesting facade that helped to break up the entire scale of the building, but it also became a bit of its own personal performance, urban performance, because the project actually, the building was inhabited the entire time we renovated the facade. And so we actually renovated just 3 floors at a time, and people were working throughout the entire time that we renovated this, which really then simplified and reduced the cost of this renovation. So these are kinds of solutions where you're trying to tackle all the different factors in one coherent design response. So we are in a condition right now, I think everyone's aware, that urban living's going up, rest of living's going down. And especially in Asia, the top 10 cities in the world, 8 of the mega cities are in Asia. And pretty much by 2030, over 50% of urban dwellers will actually be in Asia. So this is something that obviously is, a condition that's very close to all of us. Now, in parallel to this, we have, of course, the fact that we have a very fast aging population, and our working population is reducing globally. But in Asia, it's even more extreme. In China, there reaches a point where actually the elderly population surpasses the working population, which is causing great stress. Now, in other parts of Asia, especially East Asia, you see similar patterns, especially in Singapore and also in Thailand. Well, in other areas of Southeast Asia, there's a little less of the impact of a decreasing working group, but there's still a very large increase of elderly population. And so this is something that we have to consider. And so especially in China, what they've tried to do is look at, okay, well, then how do we draw the population of the younger working class population, right? The working age population. And so you see this reflected in how they start judging the attractiveness of cities, because the factors in which they actually judge these cities reflects a diversity of life quality, right? That you have the leisure amenities, you have nightlife, you have the different types of living to provide a nice work-life balance. And that really helps to define the future and the quality of the cities are coming. And so to attract all these young people in the future, then we need to increase what they like to do, right? So not only we want to look at how they live, how they work, how they play, but no one does this separately anymore, right? To find a solution is also to merge these ideas together. So you work, live, and play together. You do everything simultaneously. That's what this era has allowed us to do. And so we need to design then projects that also then tackle the way in which we live and constantly will live in the future. And so one of the projects that does that is a project we're doing right now in Hong Kong. It's currently under construction. It's the Lyric Theater Project. The Lyric Theater Project actually is right in the West Kowloon Cultural District. It's right on the waterfront. It is part of a much larger district to really enhance the performing arts, the cultural arts in Hong Kong. But what is really nice about this project is that it's not just about providing more cultural performing arts venues for the city, but it's about really encouraging greater interest in the performing arts and really supporting them. So this facility then is serving not only theater goers or visitors who want to experience the building and go to all their F&B programs, but also it actually has then 8 dance studios that also then have resident dance companies. It has different operators. It has touring groups. So when you're thinking about these kinds of venues, you have to think about all the different user types. Now, this project is a very ambitious project, as many projects in Asia are. It originally started as one theater complex. It very quickly blew up into a 3-theater complex with 1 additional rehearsal room and black box, as well as 8 rehearsal rooms and 3 floors of F&B. So all of this was put into the exact same size building that was originally planned for 1 theater. On top of that, the building is sitting on top of the Airport Express line, which means that the entire site is shaking. And it's on reclaimed land, because this is Hong Kong, as you might very well know in Singapore. And because of the original master plan, all of the vehicle traffic is below ground, which means all of the loading into the project, all of the car parking, everything is below ground. And so this creates many, many, many different constraints for this project. And this project then became very much how to solve all these and really make the user experience so that you actually can't tell that these exist. And so what we did is we found a way where actually half the building is below ground. The largest theater, because there's 3 of them, is also below ground. And we found a way to then bring the traffic up. The entire building is sitting on 650 isolation springs. So while the train is going, the building's bouncing around, and you can't tell inside the theater. This is the front of the theater. This is on the north side, facing the Artist Square. And our goal was really to create as transparent a project as possible, which is very difficult, as many of you know, for a theater project, especially with 3. But we really wanted to create a relationship, a transparency between the people who are outside the building who were watching the performers on the inside. And so we actually put all of the dance studios on the very top of the building so you could see the rehearsals. And we put the foyers on the two sides, the south and the north, so that on the waterfront and on the Artist Square side, you had all of the lobbies for all the different theaters. And then by doing that, then, we oriented so that you can see at the top, we had the carriageway below it. We lifted up 2 of the 3 theaters floating in the air while another theater was sunk in the ground. We then created a circulation path to get people to the different heights so that we wouldn't require any stairs. And we did all this while also adding 2 voids in the middle. By creating all of this, we then were able to orient so that all 3 theaters, their foyers they have 3 individual foyers so that we have 3 individual performances happening at the same time. They could all have views outwards or to the waterfront or to the park. And they would also, so they have natural light. And then they would also have direct access to the 2 voids, which one connects to the resident company center, which is where all the dance studios are above, and one is to all the F&B. That way you have always a visual relationship, if not a direct accessibility relationship, to the different users of the building. And so this simple diagram was the solution to kind of all of the different problems we were facing. So here you can see a center section. The building is defined by actually a center core with 2 different ramps, one going up, one going down, with the different programs. And you can see that half of the building is below ground with the largest theater underneath. And then you have the waterfront with also the carriageway, the roads going underneath our foyers. Now, with that, geometrically speaking, we also have a roof with a green access that's available to the public 24 hours a day. So we needed public access, but we also wanted that relationship of the public looking down. So we created a geometry that actually connected the roof geometry down the voids to the 3 theaters. And then we introduced then different colors for the 3 theaters that became their kind of own identities. And those 3 colors then leaked out to really lead the visitors from the foyers into the theater. So they became a wayfinding method. And so coming from, this is the center spine, we have first then the foyer of the Lyric Theater, which is the 1650 seat. And then going in, then you have then the Lyric Theater foyer, which is actually an asymmetrical theater, even though it's for performing dance, which is a very unique situation. But because of the tightness, we needed to find a way to balance it. And so from the inside, you can't tell that actually the theater is actually fanning in different directions and is not vertically stacked. From upstairs, you have both views of the skylight up to the roof and also to the waterfront, where then we have the Medium Theater, which is also a resident company for spoken word and for one of the drama companies in Hong Kong. We also then have the smaller theater for experimental dance and spoken word, our studio theater. And so all of these designs, we made each one of them its own little identity. This one's for 270 seats, but allows for then different types of performances to come to Hong Kong. So right now, the project is under construction. Structure's all poured, and you can see it's right on the waterfront, right in front of the ICC. Now, for these kinds of projects, technology, which is always a benefit to designers, has been used in every aspect of this project. So this is a full BIM project, but it's also a project that has started using every single digital tool to our advantage. Because as you know, BIM is great for providing live scans to see the conditions of the construction site versus what is planned, looking at the construction schedule, doing VR to see the different views. But you also still need then your Rhino models to do fabrication files, to provide then the visual mock-ups, the performance mock-ups, right? You need to work in different mediums and different platforms and need to be able to work between these very smoothly. On a different side of the leisure, we have then the green leisure, the parks. Now, Asian cities, there are some that are doing tremendously well compared to others in the world in terms of the amount of green square meters that we provide per city dweller. But there's always room for improvement, and some cities can do more. And so for many of our projects, we want to introduce more green because that, of course, benefits the cities the way that we live in and the cities that we live in. And so, for example, one proposal that we did was in Ho Chi Minh City, where we actually, for a community performance venue that also had retail and educational facilities, we wanted to create a combination of a spiral that allow you to circulate the building both internally and externally, where the program then was also moving up so that you could travel all the way from then the cultural projects, the community center, up to the galleries on the top from the inside, and also could circulate the F&B and the bookstore from the outside. And this was emerging that we wanted to really bring the green quality up the building. Another project we proposed was for a project that we did in China, where it was actually a proposal for a renovation of a people's square. Now, this is the existing people's square, and the way that a lot of people's squares in China is that they're very large scale. They're really built to the scale of doing huge, large-scale events for thousands of people. But then the problem is that other parts of the time, they're pretty much deserted. And so the proposal was to actually introduce additional venues, such as cultural venues, sports, libraries, as well as introduce a TOD, so that people would come directly into Shangshan and wouldn't just go out to the outskirts to the tourist destinations. And so our idea was to actually incorporate the green and the architecture into one, to create an urban landscape where you had accessible green everywhere, but to actually have two waves of landscape that were actually reciprocal to each other across a central spine, where you had the TOD and the residential towers on one side, and then you had a people's square in the middle, leading into then the urban library, the urban living room, which was then the library, the outdoor sports facility, and the museum. So here you can see the different programs that were introduced. And to provide then also holistic design, but to also have then a little bit of diversity. So each of the programs could provide a different type of outdoor and indoor experience. And so here you can see the TOD side. So the TOD, the entire project was connected by a waterway in the middle, where we had a TOD that connected to the MEP, the MTR below ground, which then opened up to a sunken garden terrace with outdoor art facilities. And a large roof that then also catered to the large crowds and also to then the F&B that was alongside the waterfront. Facing the other side, then we had then our urban living room library that opened up to then the People's Square for outdoor activities. The outdoor sports facility arena that was directly connected to the indoor sports facilities, and also then a museum for the city's history. Now it's the work element, the beloved work of aspect, the 8 hours a day or 9 hours or 20 hours, since Asians work so much, of the aspect of living. Now, they've been doing surveys, and they found actually that the next generation, our future, Gen Z, they ranked actually, of all the different factors that they found to be the most important, having eye-opening, enriching experiences was actually more important to them than self-improvement or increasing income or stability. Not only that, second to salary, of course, they actually also ranked the importance of a nice working environment. And this is, of course, very important. Now, what is a good working environment? A good working environment is, of course, something very comfortable, might have a lot of flexibilities, amenities, but from the perspective, it also then means well-being. And well-being, then, what does that mean? That means health, right? How do you make a work environment healthier? And that comes from a very a side of the user experience that merges sustainability with the user needs. And so for a project that we did in Amsterdam, the Booking.com headquarters, it was very important to provide a facility that could serve and really benefited the health and well-being of its staff. And so that included not only then controlling, automating the balance of natural and artificial daylight or light, being able to control user quality of experience, increasing air quality, looking at the flexibility of spaces and also the flexibility between departments. We were able to also then introduce ways in which the user themselves, the client, could also get feedback so that after the employees came in, they could also evaluate how they felt. And that came back through then a loop that they could then adjust the building. That's very important to provide adaptability in the project. And so the project has done quite well, so much so that it's become its own recruiting method, so that they invite people to come in when they're recruiting to see how they work, to make people want to come and work for them. Now, we put all these together, right? You're playing, you're living, you're sleeping, you're working, and you end up with a city. And so looking at then the 15-minute condition of the 15-minute city, right? You want to create an environment where you can get to everything you need as soon as possible. And so a project that we're trying to do that is our Beulah project in Melbourne, which is the tallest tower in Melbourne that we're currently building. It makes 2 towers. One is 360 in height, one is 250. And it essentially includes both cultural wellness amenities, retail, F&B, and the podium, as well as a Centre Pompidou partnership. And it goes up the towers to also introduce the Four Seasons Hotel, branded residences, offices, really everything that you could need in the city of Melbourne. So the green is also the tallest green that we have. It's the tallest green spine, branded-wise, in the world. And the green really leads you up to then a marketplace, which is an elevated platform for people to really gather and to have events, whether spontaneous or arranged, which then also provides access to all of the different programs. Upstairs, then we have various types of working environments, for whether it's for headquarters, for leasing, as well as then the hotel and the super living. And so it's really an opportunity to provide various types of living qualities right in the center of Melbourne. What's nice about this project also is that our goals for the sustainability factor. And so not only is the project then provide, of course, passive, smart technology for the very sustainable systems and the ventilation, but we also really wanted to make sure that the green was a functional element. And so we introduced then really kind of, it's almost like a biophilic screen on the facade that varies in height, varies in depth, which we hope benefits then sound absorption, privacy, air quality, and really provides a nice feeling inside the building and out. The building also, the facade, because the floors have different heights, we also looked at different facade screens, different depths, to really look at how to provide sun shading throughout different times of the year based on the orientation, of course, of the green spine, which is twisting as it goes up. So we're looking at the future, and when you look at these factors then of providing this health and wellness, providing adaptability, right, providing an environmental solution, and providing ways in which to increase community, then these elements all together then help us what we want to consider as the 7th generation, right? Thinking 7 generations in ahead, thinking of how what we design now impacts them and hopefully benefits them. And this is what we want to try to do, and that's what we consider to be social resilience, right? That you're thinking not just of what's happening now, but what people will experience in the future, what you design. Now, of course, the considerations for the carbon footprint goes just beyond providing renewable energy, but also really looking at embedded energy or embedded carbon and reducing that. And you can see that the balance, that the change from operational carbon versus embedded carbon will change in their importance and what we need to consider. And so, of course, it's much harder for designers to consider the embedded carbon in the very earlier stages of design, but this is what we're all aiming for, right, with the EPD, and considering how we design from the get-go. Circularity, of course, is one factor, is one way to do it. And so projects, for example, this is our ECHO project at TU Delft. We tried to design from the beginning, thinking about how the project could potentially be dismantled or reused in the future. So not only is the project designed to be adaptable inside with flexible working space, flexible studio spaces, and classrooms and lecture halls, but all the furniture was actually provided from other facilities on the campus. The dimensions of the building are built so that you can actually, if you take apart this building, you can reuse the steel beams, etc., for future projects. The building actually has enough PV panels on the ceiling, on the roof, that it actually produces more energy than it needs, and it benefits the campus as a whole. And then we have various other types of air circulation, plenums in the building, and cooling systems along the facades that allow us to minimize the energy as well. Another way in which we're trying to do it at UNStudio is to look at how can we consider the embedded carbon when we start doing a design. And so we've created an app or our own internal kind of tool that we call the Carbon Builder, which we have used for a project that we just won, the Key Close building, which allows us to actually design the building and calculate the surface area of the building and assign the different materials and look at what the embedded carbon is from very early on and do comparisons of different structural systems, different facade systems, different materials, and of course, different orientations and shapes. And so what this does, it's of course, with EPD, you need to consider the location of your projects. And with that, you can then actually choose the different materials and see then what the building impact is. And so we use this for this project to be able to try to estimate and show, various considerations, what your costs might be at the beginning versus the end, and what your environmental impact is. So all these different factors, of course, are all juggled in the designer's mind. And I think that when it comes to looking at how to find the best solution, it's about really choosing the best, thinking about what's the most valuable factors that you really want to try to achieve, and consider then all the constraints that go with those. And if you choose those correct points, which some of these are what I consider these technical, being creative about the technology, because the technology comes and goes, but it's about staying on top of it without letting it constrain you. Thinking about your users' health and wellness in every type and form, in terms of their free time, their work time, their productivity, and how to improve, how they experience things. Of course, our environmental overall impact, how we are serving the world, and then, of course, how do we encourage this a society and a community-based thinking in a very kind of individually thinking habits of our life. And then hopefully then we will be able to provide designs that we can continue to enjoy in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Garett. Are you okay for a Q&A? We've got a couple minutes around.
Yeah, sure.
If anybody wants to ask you a question, or let's get some hard questions then. Anybody? Okay, I'll do my thing then.
Yeah, do your thing. All right.
Do you think there's a point where there's going to be too many people in cities and we're going to run out of solutions to create ways for green space and air and creating all of these things? Because there's got to be some kind of tipping point in body count.
So, Hong Kong has a very special case that was you have Chongqing mansions, you have all these situations. I would say that if 100 years before, if you had asked that question of how we are now, they would say that we've already passed the tipping point. Where we are now, we would say the same thing. I would say that probably humans adapt to how they live. I come from a city in Hong Kong that, they're used to 250 square foot apartments. So it's not the way that you should live, but I think that that humans will find a way to change the way they live to adapt to it. So I would say that no, we're going to continue, because the cities will get bigger, and that's what you see the sprawl of, right? Beijing going from a 2-ring to 7 rings, right? What a city is would just continue to grow. Right. But I think what will happen is that what a city means then will change. And so that what we consider now to be an urban environment will be a very different experience in the future as an urban environment. Maybe there will be suburbans within a larger context. But the fact is that where there are resources, where people are driven, and how they want to live, then they will go there. And so I think it's something that, there's been many different studies of how to de-urbanize, how to try to slow down that trend. But it's something that will naturally occur because humans are natural clusterers.
Thank you. And I think the last question, more simple, with your creative process and the quote, what design is, that you outlined very clearly, where in the world is the most forward thinking that you're working that takes that and embraces it, and where are you getting the most resistance to that process, maybe in an immature market?
Okay, it's tricky. Each market has their own focus, I would say. Definitely, Singapore is, for example, is one of the leading markets in Asia. It's really always been a step ahead. And so I would say that finding projects in Singapore, we have quite a few here, have been very open to new ways of living and introducing more green. Of course, green here is it's very important, and it's also much easier because of its climate, much easier to embed into our projects here. For cities that are a little less experienced with how to consider these factors, it's environmental factors, you have to kind of make them think outside the box because I think it's always the very first approach is a policy that kind of forces people to think in a very calculative way, right? Something that's easy to measure. But it's not necessarily a solution to a good design. And so you have to introduce them and show them that actually, no, don't worry about the ratings. You have to think about what it's actually doing in a larger context. So I can't say that there's, specific cities because every market, like younger markets, are also much more ambitious and they're much more willing to accept bigger ambitions, and you can do greater things as opposed to older markets. You get a little bit more constrained. It might be a little bit more conservative.
Sure.
And so you see how to balance, the pros and cons. But it's always a good challenge.
Thank you very much. Can we get a big round of applause for Garett, UNStudio?